You see me looking down, I'm writing. I'm not.
Welcome everyone to the Monday Night Live Q&A. We're grateful you are here joining us live, and then we welcome those of you, if you're watching this video later, please come join us on Monday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time. You can join us live on the webinars. I did mention before we got started, if you're joining this and watching this soon, we do have some special edition webinars coming up this week, both on the Wednesday and Thursday time slots for our webinars. So check those out. I'll put the link in the chat here, but join us. Pay attention to the schedule because we've got lots of interesting things coming. Okay,
Wait a
so
minute, I didn't
Dr.
even get to say hi. I
Oh,
didn't get to
hi.
say.
Sorry. I got
That's okay.
rolling. You know
That's
how
right.
it
You're
is. I
doing the
get
job.
rolling.
No, it's okay, but good to see you, Tammy.
Okay, so the first question is too. I'm a porn addict. It has been 15 months since D-Day. One of the most hurtful behaviors to my wife has been my public objectification. I feel like I've made good progress on this front. I don't scan when out in public. If I see someone, I will look away and there's no lingering or double take. But I have not been able to stop noticing attractiveness. It happens almost instantly. We
Yeah.
have read this as reflexive and not within my control. For my wife, this is unacceptable. She feels this makes us incompatible. Any advice? I am
Right.
seeing a CSAT and on step 9 of step work. She has started to see an EMDR therapist. Thank you
But
for
I wanted
sharing
to.
that. I think this is a pretty common,
Yes, and I hear
situation.
this a
So,
lot.
yes.
And so I'm going to say things that people don't always want to hear, especially spouses. We're sexual beings. Men in particular are very visually stimulated. We are born that way. That's our biology. We don't have to scan, but we're going to notice. And that is human. And I know, to me, it's like, I don't know, I want to compare to an eating disorder, Tammy. It's like, I'm still hungry and I eat a lot, but I'm not eating the bad things that I should have eaten before. And I'm not diving into the chocolate cake. But I do look and think, oh, I'd like some, or I do have something else. That's not a good metaphor. Let me just try. I understand that spouses are hypersensitive, as you should be, to any sign that we may be back at it. And so if I look over your shoulder and I see someone, you're going to think, oh, he's at it again. And what I want you to know is healthy people who are not addicts notice. I remember I was with a couple walking somewhere and he would say, look at her. And she'd say, oh, yeah, she looks good in those clothes. Or she would say, boy, he's really cute. So I think it is human nature to notice people, to be attracted to people who are human beings. And that is part of our experience. So what I worry about, there's a difference between consistent lust and the desire to go act out because the lust is just driving you and you don't have the support for it, and being a healthy human being. Now, I know you spouses at this point certainly can't differentiate. You see us looking at something else and it's horrifying and it's scary and it brings up all your mistrust. Tammy and I said this a lot, and I'll say it again. Actions are what I'm concerned about. And glancing over to someone, while it may be scary and worry you, that's not an action. Scamming the room and seeing who you can, that's an action. Walking behind somebody who you find, that's an action. But I think you do have to leave some room for us to be human. And from what I hear of the guys, there are many of them, not all of them, this particular situation, they're trying so hard. And what I learned from my sponsor, I know, Tammy, I was told I had 90 days where I couldn't have any sex or anything, and then I had another 90 days. And what I learned to do, and this is true, I looked down, and whereas I used to look up and say, oh, look what I'm wearing, and aren't you cute? I might notice someone and I look down. I learned to look down. And then I learned to put it out of my head because they'd been trained that way. And I'll just say that we have something that we teach called the 3-second rule. And I think this is very helpful. We teach the men we work with. And I really want you to hear this. For 1 second, you might notice someone say, oh, they're attractive. And the second second, you look away. And in the third second, you think, you either pray for them or you think for them as someone's daughter or child and you wish them well, and then you move on. By the way, it's not a waltz where you do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, but to notice and then move on and then wish somebody well, I think that is recovery. So, and I want to say to try to stuff down every human experience that because it makes you uncomfortable makes things worse in a way because we're scared of you and we walk, what are they seeing, what are they doing, do I know, our raises our anxiety because this is not a perfect science, and we will do things that frighten you. What I think is most important, and I'll leave it, is are we honest with you? But if you said I felt really uncomfortable when you looked at that person, I said, I just noticed them. Or I said, you know what? I can understand that because I was staring. That means everything. More than what we do is how our willingness to be honest. So I'm sure there's a lot more, Tammy, you'll say. That's what I came up with.
Yeah, and I'm really glad your wife is seeing an EMDR therapist. Like I'm curious about the this is unacceptable and this makes us incompatible, and that would be something that I would really be curious about if I was speaking with her. I would really want to understand that like what is she looking for you to be robotic? Like, are you always supposed to walk with your head down and never notice another person? Like,
Mm,
it's really difficult because it is. I get from the part. I'm not minimizing the partner experience, but it's like we live in. The opposite of addiction is healthy connection. And so missing the opportunities to connect on a human, not a sex addict way or porn addict way, like those like being part of humanity, rather than being like so different that we have to walk in shame with our heads down. So how do we find that space where it works for both of you? And I think with I wonder, I don't think, I'm curious for your wife, if you are intentional before the two of you go out, and it is, I'm committed to being with you. I'm going to, here's our
right.
goal. We're going to the grocery store, whatever it is, and here's our, little code words of, or a hand squeeze or whatever. I'm gonna focus on you, spouse, and but I'm also part of humanity. But yeah, I'm with Dr. Rob. It is actions. If you're rubbernecking, or all of a sudden you're lost in la la land because you're thinking about whatever, like, but to humanize that this is a person. This is just like I am a person. Every person deserves to be respected as a human being, not for my sexual gratification or objectification. But I'm really glad your wife is seeing an EMDR, and I'm hopeful that beyond that, she's also working with a partner, trauma person who can help explore, what would be acceptable, and why. Like, what I'm really going to is, I know she's looking for safety. I know she's looking for, you will not ever do that again. I will never, ever, ever be hurt, and that isn't realistic, like, but what we do today can help us be, today I'm going to be good because I'm doing my work. I'm taking it's my insurance policy. I'm doing what I need to do today. Tomorrow I'm going to do similar. I'm going to take care of myself. I can't promise you that I'll never, ever, ever, but I sure can show you with my actions that today this is what I'm doing, so that I'm not going to do that. And I'm learning and growing. But like Dr. Rob said, this is imperfect. We are humans. We are imperfect. So how do we do this to the best of our ability, accept responsibility if we make a mistake, and move forward? So that was my
I
thought.
had a great thought listening to you. Just either I'm not listening, I'm just thinking, or I'm listening. You're inspiring me, and I'm not going to tell you which. But so I want to go back to my story with my sponsor because I learned to look down. I learned a lot about not being sexual with people. I learned how to who I was if I wasn't constantly trying to get attention from a man or a woman.
Hmm.
I learned who I was when I was, learned to look down and not respond. I learned a lot of things, and he made me do another 90 days. But the one thing I didn't learn is how to date, how to go out to people with people, how to be sexual, how to do the healthy things. And so not doing things is a step to doing healthy things. And so if I never learn how to walk in public and notice someone and then move on, if I never learn that, then how am I going to learn that? And we can't be locked inside. So again, I am not defending. I'm just saying that there has to be room for us. And two more things. One is I wonder how the partner's being responded to, because if I'm a partner and I'm saying, I'm uncomfortable with this, and you say something like, I don't know why you're uncomfortable with, why don't you leave me alone? I'm not, well, that's going to make me as a partner think, you're someone I don't feel safe with. That really is what Out of the Doghouse is about. The course, the book is about how do I respond with empathy, even though I feel defensive. And I know for addicts, when we don't do something, I didn't do it, I didn't do it, I didn't do it. That doesn't matter. What matters is that our spouse is worried that we did. And so to respond to them with respect and dignity, rather than saying, I don't know what you're talking about. There you go again. I'm never going to be able to. There is something more, and this is particularly important to me, and I hope you can understand this, that in treatment, we basically, they call it circle plans, but basically we help people have a very clear definition of what is acting out. If I see a sex worker, if I look at porn, if I call an ex-girlfriend, whatever that is. But I have seen programs where people say, okay, you can't lust. It's a slip. You have to start all over again, like an alcoholic has been drinking. If you lust, if you look at that person across the room, you have to lose your time. If you lie to me as a spouse, you're going to lose your time. You have to start all over again. It's never going to get better. And so what I want you to know is it takes, as Tammy says, years and years for us to become better people. That's what the 12-step programs are for. That's what the therapy is for. Um, but but we need to learn, right, how to engage, how to look, and in our clarity, if I do this, is that it's acting out. You can't say lying. You can't say lusting, because I want you to understand that an alcoholic gets time in their program, very precious time, because they haven't had a drink, 3 months, 6 months, whatever that is. But what if they walked into a bar and they wanted a drink and they looked around and then they said, no, no, I don't belong here. I wouldn't want to say, well, my year of alcohol sobriety goes out the window because I walked into a bar. I have to pick up that drink. And so I do think, and we may lie, we may be awful people. That is when we really need to look at ourselves and say, I need to work on me. I need to improve. This is not okay. I'm hurting my relationship. But you can't say, I have to give up 3 years of not having sex with and acting out because I lied or told a secret. They're big warning signs. And I just go back to this because I completely understand that spouses want more than us just not acting out. You want someone who's honest. You want someone who's respectful. You want someone who doesn't keep, all of that. But what what you can count on in terms of recovery is that we are not going to engage in our sexual behavior, and that alone, to me, is the bottom line. It's what you do that matters. So anyway, that's just what came out of my head. I know we finally got lots of questions, Tammy.
And that's great. And I one more thing, and like, yay, you're at 15 months, and you're at 15 months, so these are old patterns and it's going to take time. And Dr. Rob was right. I say all the time, we did a webinar on real recovery, and it's 2 to 5 years based on what you're doing. And I hear a lot of things that you're doing that will help you move forward. So, stay the course. This is the hard stuff. It does get easier because you learn to integrate all this into all areas of your life. So you're on the path. Stay the course. Okay. The next one, Dr. Rob, is
I can hear.
I'm the betrayed spouse, 6 months out from discovery. Can you speak to some reasons why a betraying husband in recovery who had many affairs across many years would not want to resume physical intimacy with me after 10 years of a sexless marriage? That's a challenging question.
Well, I think that's a very, I think, what do I want to say? Sexual acting out is not about sex. It's about our inability, the way we have learned to contain and tolerate emotions. So there's a very different relationship between being sexual with my partner and running out and having indiscriminate and all of that. And I say this a lot, I write about this. Having sex with some stranger, or an affair partner, or looking at the porn, I'm not going to get hurt. I'm not going to get disappointed. I'm not going to feel less than. That situation is there to make me feel great. And I can escape, because we have histories. I can escape from any bad feelings, because if you're my wife, you can hurt me. If you're my spouse, I can be let down by you. I can be deeply disappointed. And that's what I grew up with. So in many ways, we are intimacy avoidant. Seeking sex, and Tammy can talk about intimacy. I mean, I'd love you to talk a little bit, Tammy, to them about how you get from, zero to the sex part, because I think that would be really helpful. But I don't think that, I don't know what to say about that. Let me find the question. Actually, I want to be more clear about this one. No. Someone's in our program.
6 months out
Yeah,
from
I see it.
discovery. Can you speak? Yeah.
So we don't know how to be intimate with you. We know how to be sexual with strangers. I talk a lot about with the clients is, will sex ever be enjoyable now that I'm not having all these intense experiences? And, I think in Alcoholics Anonymous, people say, well, will I ever have fun if I'm not drinking? I can tell you for myself that my sexual experiences when I wasn't acting out, within a 20-year relationship have been so much more freeing, so much more. They come from a completely different place inside of me than the intensity of acting out. But getting to the intimacy with a partner from the craziness of the sexuality is a long journey. And I think spouses think, well, if you had all that sex over there, why are you having a lot of sex with me? And all I can say to you is they're completely unrelated from an emotional state. When I'm having sex out there, I am escaping. When I'm having sex with you, I am moving towards someone. And for many of us, that's very scary. The last thing I'll say is addicts like control and being sexual with a spouse. When I hire you, you'll do whatever I want. I look at the porn, I look whatever kind of porn I want to look at, but I can't control how you respond to me, how you react to me, how you feel about me when I'm close to you. And it's a whole different ballgame. So I leave it to you, Tammy. I'm going to go back to looking at questions.
Okay, I have a lot of thoughts on this. So first of
Good.
all, it's 6 months out, and like I would say abstinence, maybe some sobriety. Real recovery takes 2 to 5 years. So like this is really early on this. And I hear after years of a sexless, after 10 years of a sexless marriage. So you guys have been together, a longer period of time. So comparatively, this is a small amount of time. So a bunch of things. A, what is he doing? I'm going to use he and she. What is he doing, the betraying spouse, for his recovery journey? Like, because the more effort is put into it, just not acting out is not going to change anything. So that would just be abstinence, not doing what we weren't supposed to do in the first place. So, you had discovery, big crisis, big, big feelings, big emotions, big mess. Now,
Mhm.
partner, what are you doing to take care of you? And do you want? Do you trust him? Are you ready? Is your body ready to have sex with him? Third, what are you guys talking about with this? Who are you working with? Do you have qualified professionals that you are working with that will help you on this journey? We talk about individual therapists early in the process. Your individual therapist can do conjoint therapy, which means both of them with both of you, and you guys could have some discussions about this. Like, yes, as a betrayed partner, I am ready to do this. Betraying partner, I'm scared to death. Like Dr. Hobbs, I'm scared to death to have sex. I don't even know how to do this because, like, oh my gosh, it's scary, 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 and vulnerable. Dr. Rob uses the come here, go away, come here, go away. That is such a good analogy for
Mhm.
how we want you really close and we're terrified, so there's all of these feelings and scariness. And one of the things I have found to be most prevalent is lack of actually talking about it. Like, no, it's like we expect it to, like, okay, now we're going to magically figure this all out, but we're not having any conversations about, what are we looking for? So then what Dr. Rob was kind of alluding to was we talk about like sensate focused touch, where it isn't about like having sexual intercourse. And Dr. Rob did a couple of different webinars, but June of 2024, he did one on intimacy, and he talked about, like, he looked it up on Chat GPT, I'm sure, but it was like, guess what? In the term intimacy, sex didn't come up.
Mhm.
Like, so it's about building intimacy rather than just sex, because sex addicts can
Mhm.
prove that you can have sex and not have any intimacy. So what do you need to do to gain connection and intimacy? And sensate focused touch can be like, that's Masters and Johnson, but there's sexual reintegration. Doctors Bill and Ginger Burkaw did a podcast with Dr. Rob on that topic. They are working on revising the workbook. It isn't done yet, but they are working on revising the workbook because there's some codependent language in. So it's like, take what you need and leave the rest. There are sex therapists who are also CSAT trained. Email tami@seekingintegrity.com. I don't know who your CSATs are. You can also talk to them and find out, who they would recommend. There can be, you may need some outside help, for this, but um, it's, can you speak to some reasons why? I
I
mean, go ahead.
sorry. No, you go
I was
ahead.
going to say, kind of less helpful, and this is true about the addiction too. What do you need to do today, and how do you guys move forward? Like those would be questions that would be, more useful than wondering why he doesn't want to do it. But I'm going to tell you, partner, it isn't you. It is not like it's some crazy thinking in his head or whatever it is, some scary whatever. But you guys can move forward on this, but communication and getting proper support will be the most helpful.
So Tammy, I sometimes it's not a good idea for me to put things in the chat because I do it wrong. But I did put
Let
something in
me go
here.
check you.
Okay,
So
thank you. Did that work?
you did it to everyone. Thank you. Yeah.
Good. You're welcome. Sometimes I just texted Tammy. She's like, I already
No,
know that.
you did. You actually, I see that now. You did just to, yeah. So you
So it
did
did just
to
says
host
to
and
host and
panelists. Yeah. So,
panelists. Oh,
so
you're not
it's
a
a
host.
sex addicts seek intensity, not
I'm gonna learn
intimacy.
that.
I'm copying and paste, or I'm putting it in
Okay,
there.
I'm gonna
So
learn how to do
now it
this.
went to everyone. So yeah.
So I learned a long time ago this particular phrase, which is sex addicts seek intensity when what we really need is intimacy. And I wrote down a little bit that and this is going to be a little hard for people, but I've been in a 25-year relationship, so I know this. When I talk about the intensity part, when I see somebody new in terms of, a prostitute, a sex worker, when I get into the affair, all of those kinds of things, the porn, it's all new to me. I've never seen those breasts before. I've never seen that butt before. I've never seen that person undressed before. So um, men, period, thrive on new stimulation. We're very visual and we thrive just as men on new stimulation. So, yeah, seeing body after body after body, if that becomes your norm, that's you're going to think of as sexuality and connection. But, and this is the part people, just say it. When you've been married 10 years, I've seen that butt before. No offense. And I love that butt and I enjoy having sex, with that body or whatever, but it isn't coming out of that newness that, oh, look at that. And it doesn't come from that. It comes from growing something between the two people that isn't intense in the same way. It can't come, like my sexuality with you as my partner cannot come out of that kind of objectified, baby, you're so hot, whatever that is, because that's not real and that's not what you want. So for us to train our brains from let's look at every new thing I can and completely, get excited about that too. I'm with this person and it's out of our connection that we're going to grow intimacy, all kinds of intimacy. It's a big shift for us and it takes time. Two more things. I don't think 6 months is that far, didn't they? Six months.
Yeah.
That's not very long, and so there may be a lot of issues that still need to be worked through. The expectations that we're going to have that kind of intimacy might be a little premature, from what I can speak. And again, I understand the spouses are thinking, if you had all that sex with people and you say you love me, then why aren't you having sex with me? And I think it's more complicated than that. I think that's what we're really speaking to. So, oh, there's one more thing, which is I agree with Tammy. How do you talk about this? Oh, actually, I was going to say something else I wrote down. Re-engaging something. And I'm going to say this in another bad metaphor. It's actually true. I don't tell Tammy. I haven't got on my bike in months. I haven't. I just haven't. And I got on my bike the other day and I was sore and my muscles hurt because, I was something that I was very comfortable with, enjoyed before. It took a long time for me to kind of get in a place where I was comfortable with that. And if we haven't had sex for 10 years, then, oh, excuse the metaphor, I haven't been on that bike in a very long time. I might get on the bike and fall off. So it is a learned, practiced process where spouses have a lot of understandable expectations and we are worried about doing it right. And oh, I'll say one more thing. A lot of things that come up for addicts is if I have sex with you again, will it then drive me to wanting to act out? Will that be, and spouses too? Well, if he has sex with me or she has sex with me, does that mean they're going to go running out the door again? And again, that's what we need our program for. That's what we need our therapist for. I've said this many times, but part of that sponsor I had said, if you're going to be sexual, I want you to call me before. I want you, spouse or yourself. I want to know what's going on. And then after you need to call me, which meant I didn't report back on that was great sex. What I reported back to the sponsor is, I felt triggered when I'm back out in the world, or we had a great time. So there's accountability even within this for addicts. And I want you spouses to understand, and I'll say it every single time, that there's nothing you can do with us or say to us that's going to make us act out. We can have the best sex in the world and then think, ooh, I want more of that. And then we can go act out. But the choice to act out is on us. It may stimulate us. It may, all kinds of things may make me want to drink if I'm an alcoholic, but getting that drink, that's on me. So how's that, Tammy? We did good, huh?
Yeah, I just want to go to it's early in the process and make sure that both of you have the right support. Okay. I'm the betrayed partner. My husband is currently in our residential program. I don't hate my husband. Surprisingly, I'm not angry either. Deep down in my gut, I know my husband loves me despite what he's done. My question is, during our calls, I catch myself wanting to be supportive because he appears to be genuinely trying to do the work while in treatment. But I'm also afraid I'm too nice. He'll somehow think I'm not upset over what he's done. Any advice would be appreciated. Thank you for asking that.
So I'm full of stories tonight, Tammy. So first of all, thank you for coming to our program at Seeking Integrity. I truly think I was writing someone, I've been doing this for 30 years. 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the program we have and the work that we do is really extraordinary. And it's very personal, it's very small, and it's all men. I just feel really good about the program. So I'm glad you felt safe enough for your husband to come to Seeking Integrity. But in any case, there's all kinds of stuff mixed up in this, which is so I'll give my example. Tammy's heard it a number of times. I go to a 12-step meeting and I got a year sober, and everybody says, oh, good for you. And that's fantastic. And you did really great. And rah, rah, rah. And then I go to my therapy group and I say, you know what? I haven't acted out in a year. And they say, oh, that's great. Fantastic. Good for you. And then I go home to my spouse and I say, guess what? It's been a year. And they say, well, who effing cares? Because you cheated on me for 10. And then, by the way, the addicts go back and say, oh, my spouse is so mean and they just don't, that's their BS. But in any case, I need support, but you don't need to be the person who gives it to me. When I'm in treatment, I have men all around me. I have therapists. I have lots of people to turn to and say, I'm worried about this call with my wife. I hope she's nice to me. He's nice, whatever it is. But I understand it's not their job to make me feel good. And it's also not my job as an addict to prove to you how well I'm doing. So that's real addict behavior. Let me tell you, and I've had this, guys in treatment, I'm doing so great and I'm learning so much. And we're trying to reassure you. We're not necessarily in a meaningful relationship. We're very good manipulators. So just to get to the detail, I might say something like, it sounds like you're doing really well. Or, from what I hear, makes me feel good that you're doing, or I'm glad that sounds like the right place for you. So saying your truth, great. I'm sure you are pleased that they're being more honest, but doing it, I think they said to wanting to be supportive because he appears, I don't think it's your job to make me feel anyway. And Tammy will say this, well, Tammy, would you speak to the anger piece? Because there's a little bit here about, I want to make you feel good and I'm not angry. And that I know, understand that's how it feels, but when my focus is on how they're doing, it's very hard for me to like if you're wanting to support him for doing the good job that he's doing, it's really hard to be angry and frustrated and upset at the same time. So Tammy, could you speak to that a little bit, or maybe you have a different
I
piece?
can because I actually Debbie McCrae did a webinar, and I don't think I put that one in my hit list. But she talked about, and maybe she did. I'll have to look. But she was talking about anchor for partners, and I said, well, what happens if a partner isn't angry? And she said, oh, they are. They're just not in touch with it, and so it's more work, to kind of pull that forward, and it could be hurt, it could be sadness, it could be whatever. Like there are some emotions, but I'm with Dr. Rob that it feels like, and I'm not saying this is true for you, but it feels like I have to show up and be supportive of him. No, he's got a whole team of people doing this. So what I say to partners when their spouse is in treatment or partner is in treatment is like, what are you doing for self-care for you? Like lean into the most self-care you can do, and that could be working with your qualified professional, that whatever it is. But I would invite you to consider your actual feelings, because it's easy to shut them down, and not look at how hurt. You can do all the logic. I understand in his brokenness, he did all of these things. I get it. Like you can go to that place, but it's still it's a deflection off of this has been so hurtful that my husband has to go to residential treatment to get help because this is hurting him, hurting our relationship, and all of those things. So there's some feelings in there that I suspect you haven't been able to tap into yet. Get support, but I wonder, like, even if you start journaling about, like, how do I really feel? And, like, don't overthink, just write, so that it isn't a headspace thing, but it's just like, what are my feelings? I bet you'll find some things that you may have not caught yet. But he doesn't need support. I like what Dr. Rob was saying. You can say honest things. It sounds like you're doing really well. I'm glad you chose that, but whatever's true for you. But he's got support. I am hopeful that you lean into support for you. Other thoughts on that one?
No, I want to get to the next one because I've been
Okay.
working on it while you were chatting.
Okay. What is your take on limerence? Is the treatment different? And I would assume comparing that to sex addiction or porn addiction. So
So, guess where I looked? I wanted to give
chat
a
GBT.
really well
Yeah.
because they can say it better. Well, let's call it AI because that's a name for a company. But I looked in AI because they can set it better than I can. And what it says is, limerence is an intense, involuntary, romantic infatuation. It's driven by bonding biology. So that's a lot of the neurochemistry we use to bond. I think um, serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin is our bonding hormone. So, limerence is intense involuntary romantic infatuation driven by bonding biology, marked by obsessive thoughts, idealization, daydreaming, and the emotional intensity behind love songs and poetry. So, basically, it is, and they said, intense involuntary romantic infatuation. Obsessive and intrusive thoughts about that other person, a need for them to love you back, and you think about them all the time. And I love this part, you idealize them and minimize their flaws. So basically, this is what early love is. Oh, they're so wonderful, they're so musical, I can't wait to talk to them. You're telling every friend about how wonderful they are. You want to spend every minute, you're daydreaming. And this actually has an important function, which is, and this is biological, is we want, I don't say we want, the nature wants us to bond. So when the kiddos, using your term, Cami, nature wants us to bond. So when those kiddos come along, that dad is bonded. And that dad feels that connection, that dad doesn't move away, because if we don't have that deep, meaningful intensity in the beginning, it's very easy when that's over to start to drift apart, or if that doesn't happen. So it is, yes, a biologically important way that we bond in order to create family and children. And it's intense, and it is very powerful, and people feel like they're losing their minds. And by the way, your friends are so tired of hearing about them. Let me tell you. But there are people, we call them love addicts, and they live on limerence. So, and many addicts think this, well, I'm not feeling that intense love and bonding, and I'm not, and sex and love addicts in particular, then it must mean I don't care about them anymore. It must mean it's not a good relationship unless I'm feeling that early intensity. Well, the early intensity is going to pass. And by the way, that's when the real relationship ends. That's when I notice, oh God, I want to say this. I notice you fart in bed. That's when I notice, the things that are, and by the way, that is what addicts are afraid of, is when you become real. That's what's scary to us. As long as we can keep you in this fantasy world, then it's much easier to objectify you and use you. But once we see you as a real person, that's where the rubber hits the road. And I think so love addicts, just to say it, love addicts, I call it graduate school for sex addiction, which means that sex addicts look at body parts and they think, oh, that fills me up. And if that person wants me, and if they desire me, and if we're sexual, then I'm going to be okay. And they're not thinking about the consequences to their family, to themselves. They're lost in what it's going to feel like if I have the sex and I have this desire. Kind of love addicts are the same way, which is we engage with someone and we don't really pay a lot of attention to who they are, because what we want is that feeling of being in love, and that makes us feel so good. And it is, and it's wonderful. But we love addicts can be so involved in wanting to feel that feeling, we don't even see the person we're dating. And God, I say this so often, Tammy, I'm really getting old. I have the same stories. But I work with women, and they say, well, I dated this guy and he's so wonderful and he's so fantastic. Of course, he's married and lives with his ex-wife and he's doing heroin. But other than that, he's a great guy, because this person's more invested in being able to feel this way. If she has to actually look who this person is and begin to back away, then she may not feel that way. And by the way, last thing, for a love addict, when that limerence ends, they move on. You may be married to someone, but you're going to distance from that marriage because you want to feel that really good stuff. So limerence is a naturally occurring function that for addicts, especially love addicts, it runs off the rails. And just like sex is a naturally occurring function, but it runs off the rails because it serves a purpose for us rather than actually engaging with you. That was a lot, but it felt right to me. Tammy?
Go to the next part, which is the treatment different?
Well, I don't, why don't you, I mean, we don't,
Well,
I don't,
because we have guys that come to residential treatment and they
right.
get help with cognitive behavioral therapy and all of the other things. And
Ah,
so to me a bit of this is also like porn addiction. Because the guys, and we work with men, so I'm using that. But it's like those images. Like you don't have to go look at your device. You can recall them, and you can have all. So understanding that I have to choose. It's kind of like Dr. Rob talked about the 3-second rule. I have to choose, where my head is at. I have to choose where my behaviors are. With limerence, yes, I'm so focused on, this person is, the best thing, and I'm missing all of the glaring, issues. So yes, getting like Dr. Rob talked about, I had to call my sponsor before I had sex. I had to call my sponsor after. Like it's that accountability. All of the tools that 12 step
mhm.
and treatment teach us help us with all of these aspects. And we can't go, well, it's just my thoughts. And our thoughts are actually a really dangerous thing, So yes, we have to have accountability on it. So to me, you know, does it take qualified help? Yes. Is this going to be a generalist therapist? No. Like this is, but it's also having, the honesty, like doing a thorough 4-step, like understanding what it is, and I've said this before with, people, it's like, like Dr. Rob is really well known. He's an expert in this field. Nobody knows him that isn't in this. You don't have to know until you know. You need to know. And so that's the challenge of other therapists, generalist therapists, or people in general just, go, well, like that's not a thing, or all guys do it, or whatever it is, and minimize. So it is on, if it's causing a problem in your
Right,
relationship, if it's causing problems and you can't have a relationship. I mean, that's one of the things, like Dr. Rob said, it's like, well, when I'm in the limerence, everything is great. And as soon as those
right.
feelings go away, then I'm out of the relationship. So if there's this constant, like I never have any kind of sustained relationship, that's telling again why you want a qualified professional who can help unpack all of this.
I wanted to add all of that, something
Please.
to that about treatment, which is, we run a residential treatment center. It's called Seeking Integrity. Feel free to reach out.
Hmm.
Seekingintegrity.com is where everybody finds out all of the lovely free resources and all of that. But I think for some men that I work with and they come in, they're a 60-year-old man and they're looking at that 25-year-old and that person is everything. And they're going to walk out on their marriage of 30 years because it feels so wonderful and they're really the one and they're the one I've always known. And I'm just going to go do that. And one of the things I say to them is, you can do whatever you want, but you need to make a really informed decision. What is it going to be like when that face you've looked at for 30 years is gone? What is it going to be like when you can't see your grandchildren or family unless you go by yourself? What is it going to be like when that person moves on to someone else? So literally, I think this experience is we lose ourselves. We literally lose. And by the way, the men I've worked with have sat back and said, well, actually, I do love this person. And we have spent years and look at all the things we did together. I want them to see what they have to lose before they make a decision. And you guys may not like me for this, but I don't tell a client, go to the girlfriend or go to the spouse. I just say, make sure you understand fully the decision you're making. Because right now you're focused on the Christmas lights and the fairy tales, and you're not thinking about the meaning of the relationship you have. I'll say one more thing about that. God, I'm full of words tonight. I cannot love someone and hurt them at the same time unless I'm a really crazy person. We try to put those people in prison. If I love you and I also want to hurt you, that's not good. But if I love you and I want to go do this, then I have to put my love for you out of my head. Because if I had to really think, this is where the lack of empathy comes from. If I held on to my feelings towards you, I couldn't go and do this other thing because I would keep in mind and I would know how much it's going to hurt you. So, in some ways, we have to put all of our feelings aside for you in order to go act out or be with that other person. But then we get stuck there. And in order to come back, and Tammy said this really well, I think it's about being functional. I might go off and be with that 25-year-old and we may have a lot of fun, but I'm going to be older soon. And I love my children. Is it really going to make sense for me to leave everything behind because that feels really important? Because in the moment, it may, but over time, my life is not going to be functional anymore. My kids aren't going to want to talk to me. My spouse might move on. So, what feels good, and this is, oh God, I'm full of words. This is where the accountability comes in. This is where I'm good in treatment. I'll say, make whatever choice you want, but make sure you look at what you've had in your marriage before you make that decision. And most of the time, they think, what was I thinking? I'm a crazy person because addiction makes you lose your mind. Okay, I'm done.
Well, and one more thing, we get a lot of people who were former affair partners, and all of a sudden, he, I can't believe it, he's cheating. And, they were the former affair partner. And I was like, well, he cheated with you. So,
Right.
like, yes, this is a recurring pattern. But it's one of those things, like you said, now the reality of like, oh, there's bills to pay, laundry to do, automobiles to take care of, what, like all of the reality stuff, that's not the fun stuff. All of that other stuff that we, like we're still chasing that rather than the connection and showing up. So, okay, Dr. Rob, can a person's arousal template be changed? If so, what methods do the professionals use to change a sex addict's template?
Well, those are different things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they often get conflated. So let's say I'm married to you and I love you and we've been sexual, but I'm really turned on by men. That's my thing. I want to be with them. And my acting out has been, I've been with 30 men. That means that there is a important part of my arousal template that is focused on men. To me, the addiction in there is not the fact that I'm attracted to the men, it's the lying, the manipulation, hiding it from you, pretending to myself. Yeah, addiction is really the dysfunction. So my arousal template is what turns me on. So if I don't know, if I like someone to slap me on the butt, if I like some kind of, I use the word dildo, excuse the word. I know, Tammy. If I really like to, I don't know, to have someone dominate me, well, I can find ways to do that in a non-addictive way. You can't say to someone, you need to not be attracted to that anymore. I am a gay man. I've been married to my husband for 25 years. I've always been attracted to men. You could say, well, that's acting out because maybe you want to be married. And well, people in hell and ice water. The reality is, and I think one of the challenges of our field, and Tammy would agree, is that people come into treatment and they say, I don't want to look at men anymore. I don't want to be dominated anymore. I don't want to put on pants, whatever it is, that because that's my acting out. Well, I can't help you with that. If it's a deep part of you, I can't help. What I can help is to stop the lying, the manipulation, the cheating, and then you get to figure out what kind of life you really want to have. So I'm sure I'll come up with something else. But Tammy, what are your
No,
thoughts?
I'm going to ask you another question about this because, like, we've talked before about because of the internet, you can see things that you would have never
Mm,
been, would have not come to mind or
right.
whatever. So, like, now that's in my arousal template. And, now what?
Well, let me go back and say, uh, when I looked at a lot of porn, and certainly my day, I did, there were lots of breasts in them. There were big ones and small ones and medium-sized ones and all kind of breasts, and I saw them all the time. But I'm interested in men. And this is my little joke, is I look at those breasts and I think, boy, they'd look good with a big purple blouse. That's where my little gay head goes. But nonetheless, no matter how many times I saw breasts, it didn't become part of my arousal template. I didn't seek breasts just because thought that they were on the screen when I was aroused, because it isn't the thing that turns me on. But sometimes we see things that we weren't even aware of that turn us on. I never knew being tied up would ever turn me on. I'm watching these people tie someone up and I'm thinking, oh my God, it really turns me on. It isn't the porn that did it to you. It's that there was a part of you you didn't know about and you never really explored, or maybe, it was something that you never allowed yourself to think about. But there it is. And once it starts to turn you on, you can't make it go away. You can't undo it. Now I know I'm attracted to it. Now those feelings are there. So I used to say this, put this somewhere, or people used to say to me, the porn made me do it. The porn made me attracted to this and attracted. Well, I can tell you, I looked at lots of breasts in porn. And this is my best example. I was never attracted to breasts, no matter how many I saw. So the porn may, and this is what to Tammy's point, the porn may help you be more aware of things in your arousal template, but that doesn't mean that they're going to change when you stop acting out. And my simplest and simplistic example is, you can't say to an alcoholic, well, you're an alcoholic if you drink whiskey, but you're not an alcoholic if you drink wine. It doesn't work that way, because the problem is the drinking. And so it's kind of like that. If you're interested in men, if you like that, if that turns you on, and that doesn't work for me as a partner, or doesn't work for our family, or you lie about it, that must be sex addiction. And that's not what sex addiction is. It's not what we like. It's not how long we enjoy sexuality. It's, as Tammy said, how does the experience affect the functionality of my life? And I'll tell you what really affects the functionality of a relationship is lying, broken trust, the pain of being betrayed. Um, yeah. So I think thanks, Tammy. What do you want to throw in there?
Well, the only other thing I want to throw in is just because it's in your arousal template doesn't mean you have to
Right.
act on it. So, for
Hmm.
example, I mean, using Dr. Rob's example, like
Good.
there are men who are married to women who have same sex attraction. But they choose to stay in their marriage with their wife and choose not to act out with other
Right.
people because that's what they choose to do. So just because it's in your arousal template,
Right.
it does not mean that you are automatically going to have to do that. But it really, like, this is another one of those where being abundantly clear on what things are and making decisions and choices on a daily basis of what I'm going to choose to do to have integrity with things, that's what recovery is all about. But to Dr. Rao's point, the arousal template that I don't like doesn't mean I'm an addict.
Yeah. You just said something I thought was really important, Tammy, which is, um, if I'm really attracted to X, it's not really a choice. It's just what I am. But if I'm in a relationship with you and this is part of what I like doing, it is a choice on a daily basis to put that aside and to focus on you. It's a choice I make every day. It's a choice I believe in. It deeply upsets you. It's not the only thing that turns me on. But it is there and it is a choice. But I can make that decision to do something else that isn't necessarily fully part of my template. Thanks, Tammy, for that.
Okay, so the next one, sex addict and betrayer here. 2.5 years from discovery and never relapse. Yay. Been through 12-step program. Yay. Work my program daily. Okay. Sponsor men and still go to meetings and listen to podcasts. So grateful to hear this. Wife and I did the first step of therapeutic disclosure, the disclosure, but no letter of impact or restitution letter. There were additional details of acting out pre-discovery that I remembered after the fact. My therapist and sponsor advised me not to
Mm.
share it with her. Inside, I feel like I was hiding. About a month ago, she looked me in the eye and asked me if I was hiding anything else. We set a time to talk and I disclosed those other details. No therapist support, just us. We navigated it okay and continue to work on being together. My question is, if and when more pre-disclosure information surfaces in the head of the addict, how should it be handled? Should a couple hack through it on their own? Is it better to meet with a therapist? Been an active follower of yours for 2 years and love you guys. Thank you for the kind words and thanks for asking this question. So
Mhm. Well, I wrote some
thoughts,
stuff down, but
please.
I'd love to. First of all, I love that the spouse knew,
Yes.
because men, women, whatever your gender is, when that person close is lying to you, and I really appreciate that. I guess it's a woman, she knew. And one of the things we tell spouses is, when you put your anxiety aside, are they doing that, or are they back at, your gut will tell you everything. And this person knew that something wasn't right and asked, didn't demand, didn't just ask. In answer to your question, I think I would not keep secrets, because you know what? You might find out. You may look through an old journal or an old credit card, whatever, just looking for whatever, and you see it. And once I've told you that's everything and you find out that's more, that's even more devastation to trust. Because if you didn't tell me about that, what else have you not told me about? And yeah, I absolutely know that when an addict who's been acting out for 30 years sits down to do disclosure, they're not going to remember everything. And as hard as I work as a therapist to go through their timeline, have look at all the behaviors, some things do come up later that they think, oh gosh, I didn't realize. You sit down and you talk to your spouse about it. I do think, and by the way, we have to volunteer it. It should not be on our partner to say, gee, is there anything else? It's our job to say, I think we should sit down, talk about some things that I hadn't really thought about. You know, I don't know, Tammy, doing it with another person there, it always seems best to me to have a neutral person that you're in front of. You're not doing disclosure all over again with a therapist, but it certainly could bring up things that a professional in the room might be better handling. But I wondered, and by the way, thanks for loving us. We love each other, so it's good.
Mm.
So Tammy, what do you think about having someone else there?
So I'm going to back it up because, like,
Okay.
I, Dr. Rob knows this. I love to bake. I bake cakes, and this feels like you did a disclosure that was like I got the batter to the pan, but I didn't put it in the oven, and I didn't pull it out and frost it. So because you did the first part, but I didn't hear like this feels so incomplete. And my concern is that you had qualified therapists that thought this was a good idea, or and in fairness, it might have been your spouse going like, "Yeah, I'm not going to do the impact letter." I don't know, so I don't know I'm curious about that. I love that you guys set aside a time. Like you didn't just go right into it and do a reactive thing. Like I love that you were able to we scheduled a time and we did this. It sounds like you were able to support each other through this. Like I hear lots of good stuff. I think and honestly, going back to the full cake, like
Will
if
you
you
stop
had
talking about
done,
cakes because
I
you show them to me
know,
online?
I
I never get to
know,
have one. So anyway,
well,
so
anyway,
I
but yeah,
go
but I go
ahead.
back to like, like if you had completed the formal therapeutic disclosure process, there would be a mechanism where if something else, or actually kind of when
Hmm.
something else is remembered, there's a process for how we proceed with this. If it's a if it's a level one, we're going to talk about this. If it's something bigger, like if we go oh wow, this is going to be really big, and this was on my, like, I don't, I'm really afraid of this, then we may want to navigate it with a therapist. If the other stuff is going on and you go, hey, I think we do better doing this with our therapist, like there's a lot of options in there. I think I give you a lot, both of you, a lot of credit for navigating this. I honestly would, how do you guys feel? You said we navigated it. Like that would be a great conversation. How do you think we did? When, maybe it's not even if, when something else comes up, was this workable for you, partner? And I'm with Dr. Rob. Like rather than going, she's gonna wait till she's like looking you in the eye, go, I have something I need to
Right.
share. Can we schedule a time? Way better, to have that.
Hmm.
But have the conversation of like, we did, I think we did okay. I'd like to hear your feelings on this. Is this, if and when, and probably a when something else, from this history comes forward, I'm like, I would love for you to be able to commit to, I'm going to bring it to you, and then we can decide, do we want to schedule a time and talk about this, or do we want to schedule some time with a therapist? There may be some other cleanup to do that you go, hey, going to the therapist could be a really useful thing, but like, like you guys are making progress. Like I hear that, and you're navigating this, so good job. But like, I'm really curious about why it got kind of dumped after the first part.
Well, actually, I wanted to say something about this, which, I was really sort of celebrating the spouse for trusting their gut, but Tammy pointed this out. You should have figured out a way. She shouldn't have to go to you and say, something's going on I don't know about. That does not restore trust. There should be a way that you that you have to connect with her in some way that you can get this out without holding on to it or without them having to pick up on it. Now, the issue about about therapist and sponsor not advising you not to share. I can understand that. I can. As a therapist, when I've seen a spouse go through so much pain and I've seen a couple through so much devastation and they're finally on the other side of it, I think, oh, well, why would we want to go all the way back there? But we have to. Rigorous honesty in all of our affairs. And that means you don't keep it clean, it's going to come back. And I have to say, as an addict, if I didn't tell you that, and I got away with not telling you that, there's a part of my brain that thinks, well, maybe there's something else I could get away with that I won't tell you. So to me, disclosure is about having a level playing field where everything is known and everything is clear. And if we're going to move forward together, we are starting from this place together. And that kind of an equity between, well, I know something, but I'm not going to tell you. And then the spouse says something doesn't feel right. That just undermines the very work that we're trying to do. So, Tammy, I guess I wanted to say, like, what would you do if you were in this situation and your therapist and your sponsor said something that is very different than what we're saying? How, and I think we're right, by the way. How do you think they might handle that with those people who I think are well-meaning, but they didn't really consider the bigger picture?
I know lots of therapists, and there's some therapists that I don't refer to because, like, for example, I heard about this one. It was a male therapist, and he doesn't believe in disclosures because if he had done a disclosure with his wife, she would have left him. I'm like, sorry, but yeah, like, so therapists and sponsors are human. And they're not living your situation.
Right,
They're not
right,
in your relationship.
right.
You and your wife figured out, like, this is what we need to do. So, it's one of those, you're gathering information. But I go back to, there was something you said. I felt like I was hiding. Like,
Hmm.
that's the kind of stuff that, as someone in recovery, if I'm doing that, that's a really, like, that's a relapse, preparing moment. Like, if I'm hiding this stuff, I can't keep secrets. I can't, that's not part of my integrity in my program. So, like, your therapist is your therapist, your sponsor is just a little bit ahead of you on this, on this path. And so it's okay to go, thank you for the input, and, like, I bet even having to go through that difficult conversation, you had a sigh of relief of, like, I'm not hiding this anymore, so that's my 2 cents on that.
I just have another thought from the addict perspective, which is what did you say to that sponsor? And what did you say to that
Oh,
therapist? Because
that's
I can
true. Yeah.
imagine saying, well, it was just this little thing and it, kind of bothers me. And they say, well, that seems very, you walk down the street with somebody
Mm.
that whatever it was, I might very well, not that we ever lie or minimize, I might not really want to talk about it. And so I might create a circumstance with my spouse and my sponsor where they may say, don't worry about it. So I do want to put it on us that we can't shape things the way we want them and expect to come out the way we want them. I think about the couple who, and this is happens a lot. They've been together a long time. The spouse, before they were married, said, the addict said, I've had a few acting out things. I've done some struggles with my sexuality. I saw some sex workers, and I want to be honest with you before we get married. And the spouse often says, oh, okay, limerence. Oh, okay, I know. Thanks, thank you for telling me. But what we don't say is it's been 30, it's been 40, we don't really tell the depth or the mean or how, this is what disclosure is partially for. It's like, oh, I saw a sex worker. Oh, actually it was 60. That is a very different thing. So, and I say that because honesty from the beginning is essential. I don't want to marry someone and not know who they are. So I just want to go back to the beginning. To those of you who are dating or those of you getting to know each other, please don't minimize. One of the things that I hear from spouses all the time is, I wish I had known who I was getting in a relationship before it was too late, before we had kids. That doesn't mean they wouldn't have kept going out with you but they don't marry or make a long-term commitment to someone when they don't really know who you are, because the consequences, just like this, it's going to show up at some point and they're going to say, you said that to me. You didn't tell me it was this. So yeah, on every level, I agree. Um, and I just wonder how you presented that. As a therapist, I can imagine saying, that seems so minor. I think you're just torturing yourself with something that isn't as awful. And that would be maybe how you said it than the reality of what it is. So,
But I'm still in the, hey, I have something I need to share. Can we schedule time? So,
I
okay,
do, I want to
go
say one
ahead.
more thing.
Hmm.
I do a podcast. It's called Sex, Love, and Addiction. We have hundreds of thousands of people who have downloaded the podcast. They listen to it as a couple. They listen to it when they're driving in the car. I think we give myself and those people who do interviews and discuss things with me, I think we give a really clear picture of all of this: divorce, separation, sexuality, spousal issues. So please, I invite you
Healing,
again.
lots of like, there's like those all
Hope.
sound like really negative. There's some really good healing topics too. So,
And
yeah,
it's
it's
free.
all, yeah,
So
yeah,
we
yeah,
don't have to like us at, I'm just saying,
yeah. No,
listen,
no, no,
because it'll
no.
really, I think it's very helpful. Nice to
Yeah.
see you, Tammy.
Great to see you. Thanks,
Stay
Dr. Rob.
dry.
Yes. All right. Take
Okay.
care. Bye.